Hey all, I'm here for another Van Book Day conversation. So this is again part of 24 Van Books to read in 2024, which was started by MJ at Reading This Life, and so I've done 2 so far, and I actually have read another 2, and I'm probably going to try to get at least another one in this month. I was planning on reading Captain Underpants, and I ended up getting something out of the library that arrived on time, which I will talk about in my next video. And then I had read, I already was planning on reading for this month, for Black History Month, Between the World and Me. And so that's what I am going to talk about today, because it turns out this is banned. And I guess actually pretty recently there was a teacher who was fired for teaching it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the book is about, and then kind of, I guess, why it's banned. I'm kind of unclear. Again, I can kind of just tell you why people challenge the books. I can't possibly justify any of the behavior, because to me, banning books doesn't make any sense to begin with, and it especially doesn't make sense in any of the books that I've been talking about, because they're not really controversial. They're just reality. But so this book is it's written as a letter. This is by, and I'm hopefully I'm saying this right, Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm definitely saying that wrong. And he is writing a letter to his teenage son. And essentially, it's talking about, growing up Black and the challenges he faced growing up. And then how there's different challenges for his son, but also some of the same. And the overall premise is really about, it's about race, but it's really, in particular, what it's about is the reality that the idea of the American dream is founded on essentially oppression and hurting other, people. And in particular, I mean, obviously, that the concept of America, it required, most of our history, I don't say it required, but, we have obviously a history of slavery and, killing off indigenous people, and, it's not a great history. And that being said, there are things that are good about the country, and I don't think in any way, the book is, it's critical of our society, but it's not unrealistic. So basically what he's saying in the letter is that the reality we kind of almost have to accept is that the people who are super bought into the idea of the American dream, like he calls them the dreamers, that their obsession with the dream is to sort of lie about the underlying things that are present, and that essentially they're not conscious of, reality, or they don't want to face reality. And, again, I don't know that we can make the argument that that's incorrect. So, again, what this book is about is not necessarily about racism. It's about systemic oppression and systemic harm. And in his case, he's talking about, that the sacrifice of Black people for what has been considered, the American vision. But at a few points he talks too about, his own recognition of how he was raised, in the 90s or so, and how he didn't understand, that in some ways, even his own upbringing was kind of exclusionary of LGBTQ people. And, that was something he learned. And he talks to his son about how, you have to be accountable for yourself and you have to look out for yourself. And then he mentions how, but then there are women out there who have to look out for themselves and you'll never understand their, what they're dealing with. And your white friends will never know what you're dealing with. And I think these are all pretty valid points. If you have, and again, and he actually, he does an interesting, he looks at, which is essentially a wealthy community, that's still predominantly black, and, how obviously a lot of talk about like police violence, is often, white cops with, black people being killed. But in this case, that there are black cops and that they're kind of bought into the system. And so it's less about individual race and more about systemic oppression. And again, these are the things that, and I kind of don't understand why this makes people so upset, because, first of all, the fact that this is like banned in schools is concerning, because one of the goals of education should be to teach people to see the world through other perspectives. That's the point of history. That's the point of literature. And, we should be kind of exploring that. And it's funny because he's critical of schools. And so teachers teaching it, are kind of trying to prove him wrong, that, the educational system, that it can be improved and we can fix it. And it isn't tied to that same systemic oppression. But for some reason, again, like, no one here is calling an individual racist. They're talking about how, we have to be conscious of our own history and the oppression that is inherent in our own history. And it still exists in many of our systems. And again, and he doesn't necessarily use the term privilege, but there are certain privileges afforded to men and to white people and to, people of a certain social class and, to heterosexual people. Like, there just are. And it's kind of frustrating that, you see these things getting banned and people challenging, because they're simply, they're not a personal attack. They're not trying to take anything away from anyone. Instead, they're trying, the conversation is about acknowledging things and doing better and being aware and conscious of these things. And, obviously the term woke came about originally about like just kind of waking up, not being trapped in this vision of, the perfect world and pretending that things don't exist. And now obviously everybody uses the word woke as like a derogatory term. But the truth is, like, yeah, we just have to kind of say is like, there are parts of our history that we should acknowledge. And a lot of that history is coded into our, even our current systems. And, the only way to make them better is to go, into having these conversations. And so again, the challenge is when you ban a book like this or you challenge a book like this, you're stopping those conversations from happening and you're preventing people from acknowledging reality. And if you grow up in a certain environment, it takes kind of uncomfortable conversations and uncomfortable truths to help you kind of empathize and see the world from other experiences and other perspectives. And, stopping those conversations isn't fixing the problem, and it's not making the problem go away. It's just continuing to perpetuate the same issues. And so this is a really powerful book. I mean, it's short, but it has a pretty massive impact. And, a lot of what he's saying is, I would say, I guess I could say it's powerful, and there's some anger there, but it's not angry. Like, it's very well thought out. It's very clear what the concerns are, and there are frustrations, but also I think it's presented in a way that's very easy to empathize with and to understand. And I feel like this, not only should this not be challenged or banned, I feel like it should be required reading. It's just important to have these conversations, and to be realistic about, the issues in our own history, and acknowledge them, and, try to be better, and to try to fix them. And the only way we fix them is by acknowledging. And, it's frustrating to me I feel like every time we take steps forward, we seem to move backwards. And, banning books and stopping these conversations, to me, is just such a step backwards that I find it very frustrating. But I do highly recommend this book, and, I'll probably talk about it in my wrap up as well. But, if you haven't read it, it's been out a while, and obviously a lot of people really like it. And, there's a reason for that. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend checking it out. All right. So I'll come back with another one, in a week or so. And yeah. All right. Bye.